Yep, we're live.
Wonderful. This is the ordinary meeting of the council on the 28th of September 2021, held via remote technology. I now hand you over to our CEO, Dr. Rosemary Dillon.
Good evening, councillors. Welcome to the ordinary meeting of Blue Mountains City Council. This meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed. An audio file and a link to the live stream is available from the council's website. The audio recording will be available on the council's website for 6 months after the upload date. As all statements made at this meeting will be recorded, your image and voice may be recognised and other people may be aware that you have attended the meeting. Your continued attendance at the meeting after this statement is made is taken as your consent to your image and voice being webcast. All persons in attendance at this meeting, whether addressing the council or making comments that may be detected by the recording equipment, should refrain from making any defamatory comments or from releasing any personal or confidential information about another individual without the other individual's consent. The council is not responsible for the statements of any individual made during this meeting. Any defamatory statements or any statements which include personal or confidential information are the sole responsibility of the individual who makes them. The council's code of meeting practice sets standards of conduct for a council meeting. If any person in attendance at the meeting acts in a disorderly manner, or if a person makes defamatory or unacceptable comments, then the meeting may be interrupted by the Mayor or by me, the Chief Executive Officer, and appropriate action taken. This meeting must not be recorded by any party other than the council. Members of the public have been invited to provide submissions to items on the meeting agenda in advance. Any submissions received have been provided to the councillors. I now ask you to please welcome the Mayor. Thank you.
Dear God, we sincerely seek your blessing on this council so that its deliberations may advance your glory and the true welfare of the people of the City of Blue Mountains. The City of Blue Mountains is located within the country of the Darug and Gundungurra peoples. The Blue Mountains City Council recognises that Darug and Gundungurra traditional owners have a continuous and deep connection to their country, and that this is of great cultural significance to Aboriginal people, both locally and in the region. The Darug and Gundungurra people, Ungara, takes in everything within the physical, cultural and spiritual landscape: landforms, waters, air, trees, rocks, plants, animals, foods, medicines, minerals, stories and special places. It includes cultural practice, kinship, knowledge, songs, stories and art, as well as spiritual beings and people, past, present and future. Blue Mountain City Council pays respect to elders past and present, while recognising the strength, capacity and resilience of past and present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Blue Mountains region. Thank you all. I have no apologies for tonight. I'll just move my folder so I can actually speak to you at the same time. I have no apologies for tonight. Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of August. It's moved Councillor Mandaclay, seconded Councillor Fell. All those in favour? Against? To declare it carried unanimously. Declarations of interest. Are there any conflicts to declare? No declarations? No, okay, no declarations. Procedural motion, Councillor Miles. You might want to turn your camera on and your microphone, Councillor Miles.
Yep. So
procedural motion.
Yep. So I move the procedural motion that has been circulated to all councillors.
Yep, that's
for a suspension of standing orders.
So that you may ask certain questions of Councillor Brown. It's moved Councillor Miles, is seconded. Seconded Councillor Bowling. All those in favour? I'll do a hand count. Councillors Bowling, Fell, McGregor, Greenhill, Schreiber, Vanderclay, Hollywood. I can't see Councillor Christie, can I? Councillor Christie's in favour, yep. Councillor Hoare appears to be not voting at this stage. Against the suspension? Councillor Hoare is against the suspension and Councillor Brown. Okay, the suspension is granted. Councillor Miles, you have a couple of questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would like to ask the question of Councillor Brown as to whether or not she has complied with the resolution that was passed by this council 1 month ago, directing her to undertake particular actions, including the return of confidential documents and an apology to 2 councillors.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, do you wish to respond?
Yes, I will respond. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
We'll
start the clock.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Miles. No, I haven't done as instructed by your resolution. It's my view that it was an inaccurate and unsubstantiated resolution. Should you or any members of council want to question my conduct, the appropriate means is a code of conduct, not a public arena and not the council chamber. In regard to matter number 10, the apology that you are seeking, council has no power to direct me or any councillor to apologise. Under the Local Government Act 1993, council's powers are limited to censoring a councillor. They don't extend to directing a councillor to apologise. I'll refer you to Cornish versus Secretary, Department of Planning, Industry and Environment, 2019, New South Wales Supreme Court. 1134 is the reference for that. In regard to the matter number 11 and the return of the reports, this matter was passed by, as you may be aware, as I'm sure you've read the transcripts, this matter was passed to the public inquiry by the Office of Local Government, having been passed to the Office of Local Government by the Council. However, the Commissioner of the Public Inquiry did not consider the matter because he said it was outside the terms of reference. So it's been referred back to the Office of Local Government, and I will not be acting further until it is resolved there. I'll just finally say all my actions are always for what I believe are the best interests of this community, and that has continued to be the case.
Thanks for your answer, Councillor Brown. Any further questions, Councillor Miles?
Yes, indeed. If I understand correctly, the substance of what Councillor Brown has said is that what you have said, Councillor Brown, is that you don't agree with the resolution. So my question to you would be, is it your view that any member of the public, because laws should apply equally, if they don't agree with a resolution of council or a law or a regulation of the council, that they just don't obey it when they don't feel like it?
I don't see the point in answering that. This is just going to become a back and forward tit for tat. We have a different view on that. I've just cited a Supreme Court case that says I'm not required to do so. So I can't keep repeating. I think I'm probably wasting time.
Yeah,
I covered different ground there, but I'll go to a different area. You were directed by a Code of Conduct reviewer to undertake certain actions, were you not? And why have you not undertaken those actions, including training? Was one of the other directions that you were required to undertake. You've chosen not to do those as well.
Councillor Miles, I'm not going to go over past code of conducts that you've been involved with, but as you know, sometimes what the reviewer says is not what the councillor does. I'll just say that. I'm also going to say, I don't want to get into a lot of this, but I'm not going to keep justifying something other than to say there have been a lot of code of conducts against me, including some that have been withdrawn, including some that have been overturned. And I don't think it is helpful to continue with, I suppose, showcasing this. These are matters, as I've said, they're code of conduct matters. They're best dealt with outside the chamber.
I'll take the matter as answered. Councillor Miles, is there anything further?
we know we have a full agenda tonight. I don't regard any of those answers as satisfactory. I foreshadow at the next council meeting that I will move to censure Councillor Brown with a more full recitation of the matters that she has failed to comply with.
Foreshadow
I'll leave it there
notice.
for now.
Yep, your foreshadowed intention is noted for the record.
Thank
and
you.
in your hands. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Thank you, Councillor Miles. The next item is a mayoral matter of urgency. It's moved by myself, seconded Councillor Fell, and it is before you. The mayoral matter of urgency seeks to do two things. One is it seeks us to explore whether there are options for a state government grant to reintroduce the chipping service. The second thing it does is to, I guess, formalise a conversation the CEO and I have been having in relation to creating green waste days. We don't yet know what form after lockdown ends and prior to the bushfire season ceasing. It's my expectation that we'll be briefed on this probably as soon as the next briefing session, if the CEO agrees, on what options we have in relation to the free green waste days. The seeking of a grant for the chipping service will take a bit longer, and I'll speak to that, and I guess the clock should start. Councillors, I'm going to say only a couple of things about the chipping service, and that is that I accept the report that we had before us, which followed another motion of my own, that the chipping service wasn't as utilised as it could have been. I think 6% was the number given, and I accept that if we fund it from internal sources, it's going to mean an increase in charges for all residents. And I accept, as we all obviously did last meeting, because we voted unanimously, that we don't want to raise charges for residents any further. Frankly, although it is said by an individual known to Councillor Christie and I that we have the highest rates in state, we don't, but we are right up there, and rates and charges in the city are too high, and we don't want to hit residents anymore. But I also accept that a lot of people, particularly gardeners, because they've spoken to me and other councillors, miss the chipping service. What enabled us to introduce the green bin service was that we had a state government grant that kicked it off. I want to see if there's something available to us to explore, to potentially bring back the chipping service in addition to the green waste pickup service we currently have, not to replace it. It doesn't hurt to look, it doesn't hurt to examine, and I think that's something we should do. In relation to free green waste days, these could take a number of forms. Our residents have been in lockdown now for months, and not everybody has had an opportunity to, although there's been a fair bit of traffic into our tips, I will say, during the lockdown, not everybody has had the same opportunity to clear their blocks ahead of the bushfire seasons they might have otherwise done. We did a lot of publicity after the last fires, calling on people to, clear up their potential bushfire waste, their green waste in the winter months, and people didn't have the opportunity to do that to the same extent that they would have because of the lockdown. I also think it would be something that would be welcomed by the residents of our community. They would welcome something after lockdown that allows them to get out and clear their yards ahead of the bushfire season. We have talked about this, the CEO and I, informally. There are a number of ways it could be done. We could have locations throughout the city that are staffed with large steel bins where people could bring their green waste over designated days free, and we would take them away, or it could be done at our waste management services themselves. I'd prefer a number of different locations so we don't see crowding at the waste management facilities, especially as we will still have restrictions at least until December. But this is an idea worth exploring. Both these ideas are worth exploring, and on that basis, this mayoral matter of urgency essentially just calls on us to explore them. Councillors, I think we do pretty well in the green waste space, but I think we could go an extra mile. The feedback I get from community is that they really would like us to do a bit more in the green waste space, and I think that free green waste days ahead of this fire season would be deeply welcomed. I get very strong feedback around that and around the loss of the free chipping service, and I'd like us to do a little bit extra to try and bring those two things to pass if we can. I'm keen on both. I'm particularly keen on free green waste days ahead of this coming fire season. And if they work, they may be things that we can do for other fire seasons as well. That's all I need to say on that matter. We have a long night ahead of us. Does the seconder wish to speak? And I'll try and get the lights to go back on.
Extremely briefly, just to back exactly what you've said about the both of those services. I think both of them are absolutely necessary, and certainly would be deeply appreciated by many people who've approached me to discuss the matter. And I very much commend the motion. Thanks.
Thank you. And before I call the next speaker, I'll just ask Storm if someone could come in and get these lights to come back on. They've gone out on me. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Brown, then Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Brown has the call.
Just a question through you to you, Ms. Mayor.
Yep.
I'm confused. So we haven't lost our free chipping. So we've got, or free green waste pickup. We've got, people have 2 of those a year. So they have that. Yep. And we know it's not fully used. So I'm not really sure why we're adding an extra one, because they can do that without it all being done at once. They can book it, and there's a booking system for 2 a year. Is this?
It'd be an addition. People are asking for it, and I'm presenting it as an additional option. Councillor Hollywood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for bringing this forward. I have put in numerous councillor requests and inquiries around green waste, and many people have raised concerns with the end of the chipping service, but also this move to the approach of picking up green waste and having to bundle the green waste and tie it, chop it and tie it. Some people find that also really onerous. I think the bottom line is 2 things. The first thing is we are one of the most bushfire prone cities in the world. We need to be able to give people a range of options to deal with green waste on their properties. And I think that this motion gets us there. The other thing that isn't part of the motion, but I do want to foreshadow and share with the community in terms of things that I've raised in the CSRs, is we also need to get better at communicating with the community about how we manage green waste from woe to go. What are the options? How can you get rid of it? How can you deal with it on your property? But also, where does it go and what happens to it? So I've got a CSR in about that, but I wanted to flag that. And the reason I want to flag that is that this matter of dealing with green waste keeps coming back to this council. It is actually an operational issue unless there's major changes. But the reason that it's coming back is that we're not communicating effectively with our community on this matter, and we haven't quite got the settings right, because people continue to raise questions on Facebook, questions with us person to person via email. And so I really hope that we end up with a package of options that the community really clearly understands. So I thank the Mayor for bringing this forward, and I do look forward to the briefing, and I do look forward to my customer service requests being dealt with the utmost attention to detail. Thank you.
Can I just interrupt? We've lost Councillor Christie.
We haven't lost him. He's with us.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Hollywood. Anyone else wish to speak? Noting we have a long night ahead. Councillor Hua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll just speak briefly in support of the motion. I just wonder if we might be able to expand the scope of the briefing to deal with storm waste as well, green waste generated by storm activity, noting that today is the beginning of the storm season. And in my experience working in an orange uniform throughout the city. It is, as Councillor Hollywood points out, an issue that we probably haven't got covered off as well as we could. When we have a big storm event, a load of green waste generated in a great hurry, I think we could be doing better to find ways to deal with that. Thanks.
Councillor Hoare, I think you can take it that when someone comes up with green waste to one of these free green waste days, our staff won't go, is that storm or fire? Sorry, storm, take it back. I promise you it'll be, I'm sure that'll be covered, and we can discuss it at the briefing. I thank you. It's a good point.
Thank you. Yep.
No, thank you. No, thank you. And I also thank you for your service with the SES, councillor. Any other councillors wish to speak on the matter? No one's spoken against it. It's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. And I thank you all for your support. Councillors, there's another matter by me, which is a confidential matter. I'll take a procedural motion to deal with at the end of the meeting. It's moved Councillor Fell, seconded Councillor Vanderklay, that we defer the confidential mayoral minute to the end of the meeting. I'll put that. All those in favour? All those against? Declare it carried unanimously, deferred to the end. All right, I'll now go to items that the councillors wished to withdraw. I'll start with Councillor Fell. Councillor Fell, are there any items you wish to withdraw for debate?
Yes, there are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The item 3.
Yep.
10.
Yep.
11.
Yep.
14.
Yep.
19.
Yep.
22.
Got it. Okay. Councillor Brown, do you have any items you wish to withdraw?
Yes, I do. Item 4, item 9, I think item 13, item 13, sorry, 19's out, item 20, and is item 8 and item 18?
Yep, got it. Yep, thank you. Got those, Councillor. Councillor Schreiber, do you wish to pull anything out?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, item 8 and 20.
Item 20 is already out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Item 8, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors wish to withdraw an item? No other councillors wish to pull an item out?
Is number 19 being called out, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. What I'll now do is seek a resolution to pass the following matters in globo, and they are items 2, 5, 6.
Sorry, can I correct that? I'd like to take 2 out. I missed
Righto.
it. Item 2.
I'll start again. Items 5, 6, 7, S2, 12, 15, 16, 17, 21, 23. It's moved Councillor Vanderklay, seconded Councillor Fell. All those in favour? Against? Declare those items carried unanimously, and I thank you. To give councillors a flavour, remember we finished the meeting at 11. We have, I think, about 9 urgency motions, so you might just want to recall that and remember that I leave the chair at that appointed hour. So you might want to, you want to get to your urgencies. I guess the motivation is move through these other items quickly, because if the hour of 11 comes, we won't be proceeding. Okay, item number 2, Councillor Brown, you pulled this out. Do you wish to move something?
I'll move the motion.
Move the report as a motion. Move Councillor Brown. That's seconded Councillor Christie. Councillor Brown has the call.
Yeah, look, first of all, I want to congratulate the staff. This has been a huge effort over a number of years, and I suppose the first thing I'd say is I'm really, obviously the work health and safety I'll sort of make reference to the hazardous materials work as well, but the work health and safety work in particular has been extraordinary in terms of the way the organisation has absorbed WH&S, so it's integrated across the whole organisation. I think that integration has been one of the most powerful examples of getting across past the siloing, and I acknowledge both the Chief Safety Officer and the Safety Officer on that, and on the importance of placing that position in the within the Executive Office, so it's at a senior level, and that was identified, very much came through in the public inquiry as one of the great problems, is that there just wasn't that integration. So people weren't being told, and there was no one with the authority that we have now given. We've given authority to work health and safety, so and we've given resourcing. So I think that's fantastic. I'm also really pleased to see, because it's been raised for a long time, there's 38 business systems. I think that's an incredibly important, we know it's going to be hugely money saving and increase safety, but save a lot of money when we can get one single system, because again, that's come through how people are looking through different, documents were in different systems. And so if you had access to the wrong systems, you wouldn't know something that you needed to know. And I think the priority that's given is fantastic, that we get that. I mean, the savings and all the efficiencies and the improvement of people's capacity by doing that. I think the only thing I notice a little bit is just on the culture. I would just notice that I think it's a little. I think we still have worked on the collaborative culture, because maybe only 25% of the staff actually responded to the survey, and 62% agreed that to some extent that there was effective cooperation between the directorate. So I would see that as really only about 15% have said that's the case, or in some way the case. So I think the collaborative work, that's obviously an area that maybe needs further work, but nothing happens overnight or even in a couple of years, particularly around cultural change. So yeah, a good work on this, and I'll move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Does anyone else wish to speak? There being no one, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Item number 3, Councillor Hollywood, you wish to move something? You'll need to turn your microphone on, Councillor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I will move the recommendations, and then we also do need to have 4 nominated voting delegates. So
I'll put the recommendations first. Seconded, Councillor Fell. We pass the recommendations as a resolution. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Councillor Hollywood, do you want to go further with nominations?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I would like to nominate for the 4 delegates to be Councillor Don McGregor, Councillor Mick Fell, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Chris van der Clay, and myself, Councillor Romola Hollywood.
Okay. Any other nominations?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Councillor Schreiber.
All right. Councillor Schreiber. Do all councillors accept the nominations? All right. We only get 4 voting delegates, so we'll have to have a ballot. So I'm going to do these one at a time, and I'll have to do it on the screen. Councillor Schreiber, you wish to say something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, instead of it going to a ballot, I could go as first reserve in case one of the others, for some unknown reason, can't make it, so going to a ballot.
That is a very magnanimous thing to do, and I reckon Councillor Hollywood and Councillor Fell would accept that. Yes. Councillor Schreiber is first reserve. So the resolution is Councillor McGregor, Councillor Fell, Councillor van der Clay, Councillor Hollywood with Councillor Schreiber on the bench, but as first reserve. So ready to go. All right. Any other nominations? There are none. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. And I thank you, Councillor Schreiber. Item number 4, Councillor van der Clay moves the recommendations in the business paper. Councillor Fell seconds. Does anyone wish to speak to this?
I have an amendment to this.
An amendment by councillor Brown. Is the mover happy to yield while councillor Brown brings forward her amendment? The mover's happy to yield. Councillor Brown, you have the floor with your amendment.
Has it been sent? We don't put it.
It
up on
has,
the
we've
screen
seen it.
now, don't we? Yes. Essentially, what I've done with this amendment. Oh,
You need a seconder.
Second,
Is the amendment seconded? It's seconded. I am so surprised by councillor Schreiber. Councillor Brown, do you wish to speak to your amendment?
I do. And like me, Councillor Schreiber likes things to be open and people to know what's going on.
Excellent.
My amendment is so people understand what this enforceable undertaking is. We have done very little information about it. It relates to the Lawson depot and car park events. I just want to have that in there. What it was actually, what the allegations were. We had notices on it. Certainly the council, neither in the public inquiry, has never sought to say that this wasn't the case. We've acknowledged non-compliance, and these are around the real basics of the register, the asbestos management. So I think it's important that this is just not a meaningless motion. It's actually identifying these were the things that we didn't have in place, that were allegations. We're spending $500,000 instead of being prosecuted and possibly ending up with our own costs as well as Safe Works. And so it's two things. It's a sensible business decision that rather than try and fight notices and allegations that we have no chance of doing, is that the evidence is very strong. It's anyone who sat to the public inquiry, this wasn't something the council was trying to deny. And we accept instead using, rather than paying court costs and fines, that we are doing what I think is great work. I mean, one of the most important things is the fact that the field staff, the trade staff now have access to technology and training with it. That's one of the big things that this enforceable undertaking is doing, is we're really training up the field staff so they can now participate actively in, amongst other things, keeping the asbestos register and the asbestos management plan actually up to date through, real time, on the moment reporting on the condition, but not just on asbestos, on everything. You've got, this is part of getting our business systems really working, and actually including the trades workers, the people out in the field who don't have, aren't sort of desk workers. They now do have computers. I think that's fantastic. I think the public information campaign is also really important. I mean, at the moment, 4,000 people a year in Australia still die of asbestos-related diseases, and that's expected to continue to increase to the end of the century. It's actually heartbreaking, just the number of people who, I wish government had been as concerned about asbestos as they have about coronavirus, because, really, in my view, James Hardie should have been made to clean the whole continent up. But it is, the risks from asbestos are there, and they are going to continue for a long time. So I think the public campaign is really important. I mean, obviously we've expanded it to be other hazards as well, but asbestos is a big one in terms of public health. And obviously the third part of our enforceable undertaking is to benefit other councils. That's part of what you do. Instead of being prosecuted, you help the industry, in our case, local government. So again, I think, sure, that we're paying to do something for other councils, but clearly it really is a greater good. And I think the council has developed so many skills, so much knowledge, put together procedures, put together, the way it works with its RID team. We've now got, a toolkit for other councils, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. So I think the upshot of this is good, but why I put it into the motion, because I don't think the motion should be a meaningless motion. It should give people an understanding of how it's come about. And I suppose of the good, in a way, coming out of something that was at the time not good, and obviously had impacts on people, the men involved and their families. So, yep, that's the amendment. Thank you.
I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to take the chair, please.
Mr. Mayor, you have the call.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I note that you've reserved your right as a mover to speak. Firstly, I want to make it clear that I don't support the amendment because reading it, you could be given the impression that we're not meeting all of our public reporting obligations, and indeed we are. And I actually support all of the initiatives contained within the enforceable undertaking. They're excellent initiatives. And I would think that they're initiatives we would take without the enforceable undertaking. But I also want to make it clear to the public that I wouldn't support the enforceable undertaking as opposed to the elements within it. I certainly would support all of the projects within it and maintain them, but without an enforceable undertaking, had I seen the Ombudsman's report before we took the enforceable undertaking on board. In fact, I would love to have gone to court with the Ombudsman's report and taken Safe Work on, because every single notice that the Ombudsman looked at was either unlawful or inappropriately issued. It is absolutely unprecedented that you would have the Ombudsman call on a regulator like Safe Work to publicly apologise, not just to the council, but to the community for its conduct. So I think all of these projects are fantastic. I think it is just amazing that this council is a leader in this space, and I think all of these projects should stand alone. But I want to make it clear that I, as an individual councillor and as mayor, would never have subjected this council to an enforceable undertaking had I had in my hand the Ombudsman's report at that time. We are meeting all our obligations. This is not a meaningless motion at all, and the amendment is unnecessary. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll resume the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak? And again, Deputy Mayor, as the mover, you have the right to speak at any time.
Okay. I'm just going to agree with basically what you have said. And on top of that, I just want to say that we sat through all those public inquiries all the way through. It's been publicised for the last 4 or 5 years about what went wrong and what was, and what we've done now. We've put that out there into the public. We're meeting all the criteria, and why should we have to put it in this notice of motion? Every time there's a notice of motion, Councillor Brown comes up with an amendment to our health, our work, safe work reporting, and so forth. We've got a report further in the business paper on what the asbestos team has been doing. One of 2 councils that have proper registered asbestos teams, and we are doing work now for other councils. So I can't see any reason for supporting the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Vanderklay. Councillor Brown, you had your hand up.
I was going to ask a question, but I don't think I'll bother.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Brown. Again, if someone could come and turn the lights on for me. Councillor Hollywood, do you wish to speak? I saw your hand up as well.
Yes, thank you. I won't be supporting this amendment, and I find it fairly extraordinary that it would be brought forward at this time. I don't want to misquote our CEO, but I do remember being in the chamber when we asked a direct question around whether, had we known about the Ombudsman's report, would we have engaged with the enforceable undertaking in the way that we did? And I remember, I hope I'm remembering it correctly, that the CEO said that it would have been a very different case. And I think the Mayor has pointed that out as well. It is extraordinary that Councillor Brown seeks to rewrite the motion without noting or making any reference to the fact that Safe Work had to actually pay us money because of the errors and the findings of the Ombudsman's report. So if we're going to have a motion that's going to include a lot more details, then those details need to be in there as well. And I don't think that that's appropriate. It's not needed. The motion is very clear. It's about our progress with the enforceable undertaking. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Brown, I think with a question.
Yeah, I will ask a question that was just as it seems to be going around. I'm asking of you, Mr. Mayor, given that as you know, Safe Work weren't required to pay us, it was recommended that they make amends, and they've done so. I think it's 73 or 76,000 toward the extra testing in one of the beds.
So far.
Are you suggesting that? Yes. So are you suggesting that the council is going to pursue funds, say for instance, for the I think it's 1.2 million to clean up Lawson, or the 5.5 million to clean up Katoomba Tip? Are you suggesting that they're going to pursue that money?
I have asked the CEO to pursue that money, yes.
And are we going to be advised of it?
Well, when the CEO is deliberated, I'm sure you will be. Further speakers? There being none, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Oh, firstly, I'm going to put the amendment first. Amendment standing in the name of Councillors Brown and Schreiber. I'm going to put that. All in favour? Councillors Brown and Schreiber. Anyone else? No, I declare it lost. I'll put the substantive motion now. All those in favour?
I'd like to speak to it. I'd like to speak to the substantive motion.
You don't get to. I'm putting it to a vote now. So the time has passed. I'll put it. All those in favour? Councillors Schreiber, Greenhill, Fell, Hoare, Hollywood, Vanderclay, Bowling, Fernanda, Christie, Miles, McGregor. Against? Councillor Brown against? It's carried. All right.
I was abstaining.
Okay, Councillor Brown is an abstention. I declare the motion carried. Thank you. All right, so that brings us to item number 8. Councillor Schreiber, I think you wanted to move something, did you?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation.
Yes, move the recommendations, Councillor Schreiber, seconded by Councillor McGregor. Councillor Schreiber has the call.
I think this is a great thing that has been brought forward, that we need to show that we want to run the bushfire building conference again next year, and that the work that has been done to keep this going from former staff member Gary Parsons, and now that Jeff Rorter is in charge of that area and the director of BMEE, I think it is something that we've got to really stick by and support to make sure this is held in the mountains. We can't help COVID, but we can make sure 22, we've got it on the agenda as it is needed for the area, especially with the bushfire season not far from us.
Thanks, Councillor Schreiber. A well-timed cough as well. There's a second, Councillor McGregor wish to speak? No. Does anyone else wish to speak? One matter before us. If there's no one against it, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Item number 9. Who pulled this out? Councillor Brown, do you wish to move something? You'll need to go off mute.
I will move the motion.
Move the recommendation. The business paper is a motion. Move Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Vanderclay. Councillor Brown has the call.
Yes, I just wanted to say how pleased I was to see that we were going to take 50% of the savings from this great initiative and contribute it toward helping the community reduce their carbon emissions, which I think is fantastic. Because that really is the next. We as an organisation are on our way to zero emissions, but we need to work with the community so the whole local government area is, and I think actually helping resource that is important. And I'd just like us to remember that we have a business community that I think, as we have a general, the whole community who are very committed to acting on climate change and acting on environmental damage and protecting the World Heritage and everything. So building those bridges, building those links with, particularly with the business community and helping their capacity, I think is really important. And the mayoral business reference group is going to be, that is chaired by Councillor Schreiber, is one of the starting points for that. I think starting to get those conversations going with them about how they can be assisted. But as I said, I just think a fantastic initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll be brief. I just want to put on the public record my wholesome support, overwhelming support rather, for the motion. I must admit I was a little bit surprised that we hadn't made greater progress in reducing or changing over our LED streetlights, but I really do think it's low-hanging fruit, and would like to commend Endeavour Energy for coming to the party with the very large capital expenditure that's required to achieve this. Like Councillor Brown, I'm also overjoyed that the savings will be channeled into the community to drive emission reductions activities. I think it's very well timed as we sit here on the eve of COP26 in Glasgow, that our council is really making great strides on the ground in practical ways to achieve climate action. Look, if fortunate enough to be returned with my Greens colleagues in the next council, we've got a lot more we want to achieve in the next term of council, and I would like to invite all those present and watching in to join MP Jenny Leong and the Greens councillors for the next term of council for the launch of the Greens local climate action plan tomorrow night. And we look forward to integrating the savings from this into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hua. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor McGregor.
Just a minor correction, Councillor Hawes, that we have in fact picked some of those low-hanging fruit in respect of street lighting. There was a long program conducted by Wesrock to upgrade our street lighting, the Light Years Ahead thing that was carried on in the latter part of the last term of council. But I'd also, this is a very good program, and it also adapts that methodology that we've got in our revolving fund, where we finance emissions reductions through savings made from those emissions, those programs. So yeah, it's a great thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hua. Councillor Hollywood, did I see you wish to speak?
No, Mr. Mayor.
No, you're right. Good. Anyone else wish to speak? All right, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. I thank you all. City's raised to 0. It's moved Councillor McGregor, seconded Councillor Hollywood. Councillor McGregor has the call.
Really just a bit of a follow-on from the last item, Mr. Mayor, and I'll welcome this opportunity that we've got to resource and further reduce our community greenhouse gas emissions. I watched Greg Mullins on the drum this evening, and he recalled that he first became aware of the effects of climate change on bushfire behaviour in the 1994 fires that impacted Mount Victoria particularly at the time, and I recall at that time watching I think it was the Channel 7 news, where the cameraman was on the roof of the Channel 7 offices photographing a fire that was threatening actually their building. It was quite a serious fire season that year, and he noted that the change in behaviour and the frequency of fires that had happened since that change, and that climate change was going to increase the frequency and extremity of those fires. In the recent Black Summer fire season, our brigade alone spent 26,941 volunteer hours out on the fire ground during that fire season. That fire season has left our community quite damaged and highly sensitive to the effects of climate change. A few of my friends and acquaintances said they were going to find it quite difficult to watch the new ABC series on fires on Sunday night, and I in fact watched it, and there were parts of it that I found pretty hard to watch, I can tell you. Yeah, so I just like to send a message to our Prime Minister that look, mate, we know you don't hold a hose, but the least you could do was get those knuckle draggers in your party and get on a plane and go to Glasgow and make a commitment to a 50% reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2050 for the sake of all of us.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Any other councillors wish to speak? Seconder wish to speak?
Yes.
Councillor Hollywood, yes.
Thank you. And I'll segue from Councillor McGregor's comment about the Prime Minister. One of the things, for the benefit of the public who may not have read this report, is that this Race to the Cities project, which I obviously really welcome, and this is an initiative that's come from the staff. It's a council report which really demonstrates that the approach to protecting our environment, for being sustainable and for addressing climate change is something that's happening at the councillor and the governance level, but also throughout the organisation. And I want to acknowledge that it's not just one or two councillors doing this and one particular party. This is across the board, and I'll leave it at that. But one of the things that really caught my eye in this project, in this report, was that our council will actually gain access to some of the COP26 events. I don't know what that will look like. I hope to find out. But I think when you look at, as Councillor McGregor said, that our Prime Minister is not planning to attend, this is the scuttlebutt at least, and is still trying to work out what we do in relation to agreeing to move to net zero by 2050. It's absolutely extraordinary that we have such lack of foresight and leadership at the Commonwealth level. And it makes me incredibly proud as a councillor and to have been part of this council where we've made such great inroads through leadership from Mayor Mark Greenhill, from this council and from our CEO and all of the staff, that we are making inroads. And I want to pay tribute also to the many community groups, and particularly Resilient Blue Mountains, that is really trying to work at a community level with council on how we can include many more community initiatives. And that is mentioned in a previous report, but it's also in this report. So I really welcome this report and look forward to putting my hand up in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further councillors on this matter? Councillor Brown.
Look, I'll keep it short because I know we're sort of all saying the same thing with editing.
I'll just get the clock to restart. I
just wanted to really.
Sorry, Councillor Brown, 1 second. Could we restart the clock, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. I'm really pleased that the staff have actually suggested that 2050 is too far out, and I think it is. Like, I'd be looking at 2030, and I think that what we have that's to our great advantage, as I really said earlier, is we have a community that are very committed to this and really, really keen, and that's the point, because we can't really. They need to lead. It's we can facilitate, we can do what for our organisation, but to get the whole community
And they are already leading. You know, we have great things like the zero waste with the Lura Garage, setting it up with the Lura Village Association, those sort of initiatives. The pyrolysis one that's being worked on again that BM Renew had. So there's lots of energy out there for this, and I think that's what our big challenge is to find the mechanisms that are most effective for helping people to not to bring their energy and also their knowledge. There's an incredible amount of knowledge in our community around what the options are, and the other side of it, I think, is always worth remembering is that this is a financial win. Every time we do something that's environmentally sound, even if it's a bit of investment at first, it always ends up saving money, whether it's on waste or energy. And so that's the point, that really is going to help the community, and we can also build jobs around it. So, you know, that great word jobs, but it is important for us to have local employment. And I think this is the opportunity to be even looking at those where we can have small scale manufacture, those sort of initiatives. So I think it's really important and really exciting, and building that community strategy. So thank you to the staff.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Hoare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I just wish to reinforce the comments of the previous speakers. This is a really tremendous report. It's wonderful that it's come to us from the staff, and I wish to thank them deeply for that. This is an international movement that our council is joining at this most crucial time in the global battle against climate change. And I think it's a really outstanding example of the effectiveness of local government in providing leadership on climate change when it is so abjectly lacking at higher levels of government, and particularly at the federal level. I just want to acknowledge the German people who it appears have taken the advice of my dear Facebook friend, the distinguished Professor Michael E. Mann, who has been urging people for a long time now to vote, to find climate solutions at the ballot box. And I'd like to acknowledge that 14.8% was the result achieved by the German Greens in the elections just recently, nearly doubling their members in the parliament. And I would urge Australian voters to follow their lead at the federal elections and
Councillor Hoare,
as well.
Councillor Hoare, that's twice tonight.
Yeah.
You've used this council to campaign. No other councillor does that. This should not be a party political forum, and I'll caution you to not do so again. This is the council of the City of Blue Mountains, and when we sit in here, we sit as councillors. We don't sit with our party labels on. And with an election a few weeks away, I actually think both comments you've made tonight are unfortunate, and ask you to reconsider them. Thank you. Any other speakers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I consider myself appropriately admonished, and apologise for letting my excitement get away with myself. But
not at all. It's all is forgiven. Thank you for that acknowledgement. I appreciate it. All right. Anything further on this item? There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Item number 11, who pulled that one out? Councillor Vanderklay moves the report as a resolution. It's seconded by Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Vanderklay has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very, very quick. This is really this tender for the Lawson Dog Park and the accessible walking track around the park has been a long time coming. I think I've been on council for over 20 years, and this has been on the drawing boards for at least 15 of them. I'm just so glad to see it's now coming to the end. It's taken a long time. We've had a lot of hurdles in between. The state government came with Crown land, and that was put on the back burners for at least 2 years, and all the other bits and pieces that we've had to go through to solve this issue. But it's really good to see that work will commence very, very shortly on this now that the tender has started, and maybe next month or in November the work will start on this. And I'm sure the community and the kids will like it, because they'll have a beautiful tracked right around and people with wheelchair accessible and so forth. And I'm looking forward to seeing it in action. And it's like the Wentworth Falls Lake, the play equipment is just fantastic. So I put the motion to the council.
Does the seconder wish to speak? No. All right. Anyone else wish to speak? I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 13, Councillor Brown, do you wish to move something? That's Memorials and Lura, Remembrance Memorials and Lura. Did you wish to move something,
I
Councillor
just
Brown?
wish to move the motion and speak to it.
Yes, it's moved Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor McGregor. Councillor Brown has the call.
Look, I just wanted to, I felt I just needed to I wanted to acknowledge both Dr. Singh and Dr. Singh Nija and Sue Brett, who are being commemorated. I did know both of them, but actually it's Sue Brett that I can really speak to her contribution. Sue passed away very recently and very quickly, and just I think the loss that the community have felt, both because of her great positive spirit, but also her contribution to the community. She was on the Lura Garden Festival, the Lura Garden Festival Committee, great mover and shaker there, tremendous organiser with the Lura Village Association. Again, she was the woman getting all the promotional work done, great organiser, and she would also get up at the crack of dawn to be one of the gollies, the gardeners of Lura, the volunteer gardeners in Lura Mall, and a very talented gardener, very able gardener. And I just, as I said, I know those of us who are involved in Lura activities can all feel the loss of Sue Brett, that both have said as a personality, but is just a really competent woman. And so I'd just like to acknowledge that and say, again, my commiserations to the whole family, the great loss they feel. And there is also going to be a garden in the mall dedicated to Sue and her favourite plants. Thank you.
Councillor Brown, I thank you for that, and also echo your comments on behalf of the entire council. I really thank you for raising that in the way that you have, and I'm sure we're all pleased that you did and support the comments that you've made. Any other comments on this matter? Otherwise, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Item number 14 has been pulled out. Does anyone wish to move anything?
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hollywood.
Yep, I have submitted a motion that would replace the recommendations.
Is it seconded? Councillor Van der Clay seconds. I take it all councillors have read that. Councillor Hollywood, you have the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And for the benefit of the public that can't see the motion, I'm moving for a deferral of this report pending further briefing. The reason why I'm moving for deferral is that this represents a significant change to the way in which our LEP operates, and I have grave concerns about that. When I've read the report and what the material that I've been provided with, what I'm seeing is land on the edge of the town that is zoned E4, that is bushfire prone, significantly bushfire prone, that is up stream or upland of protected vegetation. I also know that I've had people who live in that area who are unaware of this proposed change, and this is one of the reasons why I want to seek deferral, raising concerns around traffic in the local area, changing amenity in Blaxland Road, and also I know that people are concerned about the increase in hard surfaces. So to me, these are fundamental issues to our LEP. And one of the things that we did when we were looking at our LEP back in 2013-14 to create LEP 2015 was that we didn't make changes to the zonings without proper consultation with the community. And so I am really concerned that this sends a signal around what changes might be afoot or what others might seek to do to change our LEP. I don't think that this is the right time. I think we need more information. If the applicant, it's a matter for the applicant, but if the applicant wants to put in a development application that's compliant with the LEP as it is, then they're able to do that. So for me, this is absolutely 100% about maintaining the provisions that we've worked really hard for within our local environment plan and protecting those. And I think that is absolutely fundamental to my role as a councillor and representing the community and what the community would expect of us. So more information is what's needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollywood. Does the seconder wish to speak? No? No? Okay. Any other councillors wish to speak on this matter? No one else? If no one else wishes to speak, I note there's one matter before us. It's the resolution or the motion put forward by Councillor Hollywood. I see no other hands going up, so I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? I'll declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 18, I think Councillor Brown, you pulled this out, road renaming proposal, Aspinall Road.
I pulled out number 16. I have an amendment to 16.
Ah, right. So did you pull out? Okay, no worries. We'll come to 16 then. Councillor Brown, firstly, I think, Councillor Brown, you've got an amendment and we may have a foreshadowing of the original motion, but let's see what your amendment is. That's the one we've seen in writing. We've got that. Is it seconded?
Sent through, yes.
Yes, got it. Is that seconded by anybody?
By Councillor, yes.
Well, below me down, Councillor Schreiber. Councillor Brown, do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Yes,
before you do, I have a motion from Councillor McGregor, seconded Councillor Vanderklay, foreshadowing the resolution in the business paper as a possible motion. But as it's a direct negative, I'll take it as a foreshadowed. Councillor Brown, you have the floor.
Sorry, before I start, can I just ask, I didn't understand what that meant, the foreshadowing.
They're foreshadowing that if your motion's defeated, they'll move what's in the business paper.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Okay, you have the floor.
Yes, so the reason this is for me all about probity, transparency and community engagement. And so I'm very, very concerned that we set up an advisory committee that was set up first by, in a rush, appointing a chair with no terms of reference, then the chair who's a councillor, and the mayor and the CEO come up with terms of reference, and those terms of reference allow them to select the committee that the chair already exists for. And then we have a committee that is selected by them, and we approve it, but we're not part of but the process is done by two councillors and the CEO. And now we're suggesting that committee become the stakeholder reference group. Now, I want to take you back to the whole stakeholder reference group. The principles and procedures of that were set up by our staff. The Councillor Schreiber and I had proposed that we needed for the master planning stakeholder reference group, or we needed for Katoomba. And it was made very clear that this did not include councillors. Staff needed to manage it or looking for getting a good demographic, good representation of the community. You didn't want political interference, that you were actually trying to get genuine community engagement without it. So councillors were kept off it, although we were able to attend if we wanted to. I attended one of the meetings. Now we're having this advisory committee that is being selected to guide and to look at things like having a chair that's been made public. This might do that. The advisory committee has experts on it, but they're experts with a specific interest, including professional interest, and we are going to make them the stakeholder group. That is wrong. And to be run by councillors, 2 councillors, not all of us. The rest of us apparently aren't even allowed to go to those meetings. So the lack of transparency around this, I think, is hugely problematic. And to make a confidential group that is controlled by the chair and the CEO and the mayor, even when the minutes are going to come, when they're going to meet, if people are going to be removed from it or added, not by the staff, I think there's probity issues. And we have a $3.5 million investment here. We're all answerable for it, and the public need to have proper engagement with it through proper processes. There's a 120-room hotel that's twice the size of the Carrington, a live DA, an approved DA for a property on the edge that was sold by this council. This council is on now who approved that DA, and that hotel, its fortunes are now tied up with what happens with this site. If it did become a really successful international conference and so on, then the hotel has legs. So there's so many issues here. The interests of the universities. I feel that we're setting up something that is not transparent. The processes should be run in a very independent way, should not be controlled politically. And that's why I'm saying this. As I said, I think there are genuine probity issues that seem to be being missed, and particularly that since 1991, there's 40 years of bouncing around, and you look back at the history of this site, the community has a lot of suspicion about the council.
So just 30 years, not 40.
91? Sorry, yes,
Yeah.
You're right, 30 years. And in that time, we've spent more on land environment. There's been legal battles. We bought back what we've sold. It's actually cost more than's ever been made. I was a supporter, and I am in principle still a supporter of this, but I feel of the notion of the Planetary Health Leadership Centre, but it needs to be open. It can't be an exclusive club, and the community need to have proper access, and we can't have this hand-selected group suddenly become the stakeholder reference group that we've already established a proper process for that doesn't have councillors controlling it or managing it. And I accepted that, and I want to see that principle seen through. So that's the main thing. And I then just want to ask one question. So I've finished my little spiel.
Councillor Brown with a question.
Yeah, the question is this, is why is that last clause about Yeamans Bridge on this motion? Because it's not actually related. Obviously, what happens is going to even cause even more traffic.
Just go with the question, please.
But why is it there, and why was it not, for instance, with the Medlow Bath duplication? Because it's related
Thank you.
to that.
CEO to answer the question.
Mr. Langevin.
Yeah, through the CEO. It's a matter of timing. Yes, it is the case that the highway duplication issue is a live one. But it's also the case that Yeamans Bridge is seen by the state government as outside the duplication project. So you'll see that both ministers are referenced in the resolution. It just allows council to form a view to make its representations around Yeamans Bridge, and it's just critical in the timing of the master plan that occur now.
Thank you. I might just ask the CEO a question from me to the CEO. CEO, Councillor Brown raised a number of issues about governance and transparency. I wanted to give you the opportunity to address those, and I'll give you the same 5 minutes I'd give a councillor in answering my question.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I will answer. And I'd also like to be able to call on Mr. Langevin to supplement my answer, if that's okay.
Yes, I'll ask Storm to start the clock.
Yeah.
And the floor is yours, CEO.
Yes. The 30-hectare site, which is the ex-Katoomba Golf Course, as we all know, is an absolutely unique and exceptional site in and of itself. We just don't have sites like that available in the city. It's a one-off. It's 30 hectares, amazing views, amazing locations. And at the moment, these are also unique times. Here we are faced with bushfires and natural disasters. And also we are a World Heritage city, a unique city. When you bear in mind all those factors together, I don't think it is at all inappropriate to have the Planetary Health Advisory Committee as a reference group for the process that is looking at how best in an integrated and well-planned way to complete a master plan for this exceptional and very unique site. But the main point to make, however, is the engagement strategy that's attached is broad, will engage the whole community, does open it up. And this site has significance not just for Katoomba, but beyond Katoomba. So there is a broad and comprehensive engagement and consultation process. It is appropriate that we have expertise that is available on the Planetary Health Advisory Committee to guide and advise us on the potential for perhaps doing something that is related to planetary health, which is a unique opportunity. Not necessarily, it's not just something with universities, it's with our community, with universities, with the Blue Mountains World Heritage Institute, with a range of organisations. So I know also that we are working on a probity plan. There will be a probity plan. I don't agree with what Councillor Brown is saying. I think it is very reasonable to use the advisory committee and all its expertise to help guide this. I think we need to be transparent to the community that this is not any old site and we're not expecting to do any old fragmented thing. It is important that we come up with an integrated, holistic development for the site. And we can already see, as can universities, as can other organisations, as can an increasing number of our community, that there's amazing potential for us to do something that will create local and possibly regional and national and international benefit, but particularly local, I think, in terms of job creation, in terms of training and engagement of our whole community. And I think particularly our young people, to give them hope for the future, and that there's great potential. So we need to be upfront. So the advisory committee will just be a reference, but they're not the only people having input. I'll hand over now to Will to supplement and elaborate on anything that he thinks I've missed.
Thank you, CEO. On the time available, Mr. Langeveld, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, just to reinforce what's been said, the probity plan is important because it is a council-owned asset. So we're getting legal advice which will inform that probity plan. That'll form a very transparent basis for decision-making that the council will have before it. The point the CEO made is important also, is that the role of the Planetary Health Advisory Committee is only one part of the overall strategy of engaging with community. There will be other stakeholder groups drawn in to represent certain parts of the community as necessary, but also a broad-ranging public exhibition process that will inform the master plan.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak on Councillor Brown's motion? No. Councillor Brown with a question or right of reply?
Question. I don't have a right of reply, do I?
You
No.
do, Councillor Brown, because you've moved a substantive motion. There's a foreshadowed motion waiting. No other councillors wish to speak, so I'll take your question, then you can exercise your right of reply.
So my question is, why, it's not say not have an advisory committee, although then why make it a
Just go to the question, please.
But why have a process where you have councillors suddenly involved in that when that's not the process anywhere else? Why do that? Because I'm not questioning.
Thank you. I've got the question, Councillor Brown. CEO, do you wish to answer it? I think you already have, but...
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. There's only one councillor on the committee as the chair, Councillor McPhail. I think the intent is to provide the experts who are on the advisory committee their ability to input into the process.
Okay. Councillor Brown, I'm going to take you in reply now, if you wish to exercise it.
Of course. I'm afraid none of that's answered what I'm saying, which is that this is an advisory committee. We are mixing up the political arm here, I believe, and the powers. I've never seen these powers be given to where...
Sorry, Councillor Brown, if you could just stop for a moment. Councillor Hollywood, you can lower your hand as is right of reply. There is a foreshadowed motion later. Councillor Brown.
Where you have someone appointed as a chair, even before there's terms of reference for how that chair would be appointed. And then the the terms of reference are created, which gives a huge amount of power to the chair and the mayor. I'm not talking about personalities here, but political players, people of the, along with the CEO. That's completely different from any other process we've had on a site. I agree, hugely important site. Hugely important. A lot of money already spent by the council on it. We've got to get it right. And on top of that, we're then told, oh no, this advisory committee, we can't see the memorandums of understanding with members on that committee and their institutions, even though, again, great screeds of it have been given to the media and to social media. So there seems to be this weird thing happening where information is going out, but councillors as a whole aren't part of that process. And I was refused access even to attend as an observer in an advisory committee meeting. All of that for me is alarm bells. It's not the way this council normally sets up its committees. We would expect to be able to attend a meeting if we wanted to as observers, particularly when we have voted to spend a lot of money on it and we've all got a lot to bring to it. I mean, my other side to this is I feel that this exclusiveness is really limiting. I don't see a strong sort of local business presence yet. You know, for me personally, I mean, this is not about me personally, but I know that my professional background, I'm by far the person with the most professional background related to this very thing. But all of us would have things to bring to it. But I think those processes they're uneven. It's not even. And the idea of a committee that somehow is shut out because they've got commercial interests that have to be kept, that to me isn't correct, and certainly shouldn't then involve a couple of councillors. As I said, I'm very uneasy about the process, and I feel it's been ad hoc. You know, the way it's all been set up, and I know now we'll call it something different, and we'll make it something different. Well, then we should make the terms of reference that the terms of reference should match the normal terms of reference, not this strange set of terms of reference that I've never seen before. And as I said, I just feel there's too many developer interests. I mean, really at the moment, the only thing I can hear is that the land value around the site is going to be important. And maybe we're the only place I can see council even being able to make income. But again, all those things have to be incredibly transparent. This is ratepayers' money. And as much as we would all love a Planetary Health Leadership Centre, it can't end up being ratepayers funding universities. It's got to be that we are drawing, we're drawing obviously social benefit, but also economic benefit. And I believe that's possible. I'm not saying it's not, but I think getting it right after all these decades, these 3 decades, it's really important, and it's important that the processes not look ad hoc or on the fly or different from what is normal. Thank you.
There's one matter before us. It is the motion by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Schreiber. I'll put that. All those in favour? Councillors Brown and Schreiber against? Everyone else, I declare it lost. Now the foreshadowed motion, the name of councillors, I think it was McGregor and Vanderclay, which is the resolution in the business paper. It's duly moved and seconded. Does anyone wish to speak to it, or have we ventilated the debate already?
Thorough, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Hollywood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have 2 questions rather than speaking to it.
Thank you.
There've just been some statements made that I just wanted to clarify. The first one was the advisory committee. Was there a formal application process attached to that?
There was.
There was. Okay. And then my maybe I'll just speak to this one. Actually, Ms. Mayor, so you can start the clock.
Yep, just start the clock.
Sorry. I know the answer to this one, so I'm not going to, that's why I'm going to just speak to it quickly. There's been a statement made by one of the councillors moving the amendment, Councillor Brown, that...
It was a motion, not an amendment.
A motion, that councillors don't have any involvement in advisory committees. That was the statement. And that is actually not correct. I am actually the chair of an advisory committee for the Blue Mountains Hartabilico Friendship Committee. And I just want to correct the record there, where a councillor is making an aspersion that is incorrect. It is entirely appropriate for a councillor to be a chair of an advisory committee. And I will just leave it at that.
Yes, thank you.
I'd
Any other councillors wish to speak?
I'd just
Councillor Brown.
I'd like to clarify what that.
Well, you don't get to clarify. You can speak. The floor is yours.
It's not what I'm saying is that the chair was appointed before the committee existed. Normally, so I'm the vice chair on the Heritage Advisory Committee, but I'm not involved in selecting. I mean, the staff manage that. And what I'm saying here is we got a chair and two other council and another councillor and the CEO, and that process. And this is something which is so that the process where they're managing it, and they can also remove. I can't remove someone from our Heritage Advisory Committee. The moment these terms of reference allow that. So they are different. They're different from our normal advisory committee. That's what I'm saying to you. The involvement, the management of it is much more controlled politically, and I think that's a problem. That's my view.
Can I ask the Deputy Mayor to take the chair?
Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
Councillors, a couple of comments. There was a comment made that well, it may be my misinterpretation, so let me be clear. The committee does not have developer interests on it. The CEO will agree with me that there are no developer interests on the committee. This committee no, Councillor Brown, please. This process was endorsed by a resolution of the council. The chair was appointed by the council. The poor old mayor keeps getting thrown in, but the mayor's not on the committee, whoever that may be. At the end of the day, the activities of the committee will be reported back to the council, and that will happen constantly. It is open to the council at any time to move any resolution it wishes in relation to this project. There's only one key ingredient. The mover will need the numbers. If they have the numbers, they can resolve to do anything at any time if something concerns them. It's called democracy. We voted for this process. The losers in that side of the debate, I don't mean losers, those who didn't prevail in that vote seem to want to re-agitate it. But this process was set up by the council in order to most efficiently get this going. And what we are on the cusp of is something we have sought as a community for such a long time. University investments in our city, creating jobs, but not just that. A planetary health leadership centre in this World Heritage city of the Blue Mountains that will take a leadership role in the future of our planet. I can't think of anything more important, and we need a process in place that gets us there. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll take the chair again.
You had the chair, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anything further? There's one matter before. Yes, I think I'm just about to put it actually, Councillor McGregor. There's one matter before us. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Excellent. All right. Item number 18. Was this pulled out?
Mr. Mayor, I meant not to vote for that. I was not voting for that. That was not unanimous.
Thank you. Well, yes. Okay, you're against it. No,
I was against it. Yep.
We'll note that you're against. Okay. Item number 18. So Councillor Brown's against item 16. I think everyone else was in favour. Did anyone pull out item number 18?
I think I did.
Yes. Okay. Do you wish to move something?
I just have to see which one it is. Sorry.
Aspinall Road.
Oh, yes. I do have an amendment to that.
Well, nothing's been moved. So what you have is a motion.
Yeah. Okay. I move that. I'd like to move that.
Yep. Do you want to just see if you got a seconder?
Yes. I think Councillor Schreiber.
I wouldn't be surprised. Councillor Schreiber seconds. Do you want us to take us through what you're moving?
What I'm moving is just a subtle change. I'm very pleased that obviously we've realised with this, before about, I'd raised before that we needed to review calling it Aspinall Road and certainly be engaging with the Indigenous community. So I'm glad to see this come back from the staff, and it's just a subtle change. One of the things with the community, I mean, we're back to advisory committees. Obviously, people on advisory committees don't represent like everyone, like the people on the Aboriginal Advisory Committee don't represent all the Aboriginal people in the community or all the traditional owners. We don't put that sort of weight on them any more than we would say that Heritage Advisory Committee represent all the heritage professionals or heritage whatevers. They're speaking for themselves. And I think with this, one of the things I've become aware of is how many of the members of, and particularly the elders in our community, aren't necessarily sort of hooked in a way, so things happen without them knowing about it all the time that are relevant to their culture and their community. They're not necessarily even got computers. And so I'm just suggesting that to the best of the council's capacity, that we make contact with the groups like the ACRC, the Dedicat Cafe, whoever, and the individual elders or members of the community that the council know, and actually ask their opinion. I mean, this can then be brought into the Aboriginal Advisory Committee as a for consultation. But I'm just very aware of actually how limited our consultation actually is, partly because of just the way that quite a lot of the elders don't necessarily have, things as basic as computers really sometimes. So I'm just trying to increase the opportunity for them to feel they have been asked to the level that the council has those that can do that, and then bring that back to the Aboriginal Advisory Committee. So it's just a little bit of change to try and increase the engagement.
Thank you, CEO. Have you got a view on that slight change? Are you content with it, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, look, I think it is a sensitive and tricky issue, and I'll ask Mr. Langeveld to comment because he carries the Aboriginal liaison portfolio.
Mr. Langeveld, how do you feel about that slight change?
Yeah, through the CEO, I'm a little concerned. The Aboriginal Advisory Council has the sole purpose of providing council advice on matters that are sensitive or of concern to the Aboriginal community. They're representative in that way. Like any advisory council, if we go to others for an opinion, we tend to bypass that group. So I think it might be better to work within the AAC to support getting a range of views rather than going to a separate process, because it is the role of the AAC to provide that opportunity for Aboriginal people to voice their concerns and raise their issues. But it should be through the AAC, I believe, rather than through a separate mechanism.
Yes, thank you. Deputy Mayor, I saw your hand go up. You need to go.
I'll foreshadow the original motion, Mr. Mayor.
Original motion foreshadowed by the Deputy Mayor. Should this motion fail, the original motion will come forward in your name. Anything further on Councillor Brown's motion? It hasn't been spoken against. I have a motion standing in the name of Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Schreiber. I'll put that. If it's defeated, and only if it's defeated, I'll call for the foreshadowed motion. It hasn't been spoken against. There's no right of reply. I'll put the Brown-Schreiber motion. All those in favour? Councillors Brown and Schreiber against? Everyone else, I declare it defeated. Councillor Van der Clay with the recommendations of business paper as a motion. Is that seconded? Seconded, Councillor McGregor. Is there any debate? Councillor Brown.
Look, I mean, I will support this I think it's much better than where we were before. So I'm not actually speaking against it. But I would just like to note, I guess, that we need to be really careful about thinking an advisory committee ever speaks for a whole community. That just concerns me. And I know the reality of it. And I think that's asking too much of people when they serve on a committee to be speaking on behalf of a whole section of the population. But that said, I still support this because at least we're moving away from just calling it after Mr. Aspinall and making an effort to get some alternatives from the Indigenous people. And as I've said before, it's on Gundungurra country. It's in a really important, the road actually follows an ancestral dreaming track. There are some significant burials there, both in traditional Aboriginal style, as well as there's still of the 2 graves on the consecrated cemetery. One of them is Aboriginal woman, Fanny Lynch. So it's a very powerful place. And Auntie Sharon Halls has already made some very interesting suggestions that the Aboriginal Advisory Committee might want to consider, drawing on Gundungurra heritage. So I do hope, and I'm grateful to the staff for taking this up and rethinking really the process. So even though it's perhaps not exactly as I would have done it, I still am supportive of it. Thank you.
Nothing further on this matter, I take it. Councillor van der Klee.
Yeah, quick question and to the CEO, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO. Is when Mr. Langeveld brings this to the advisory committee, the Aborigine Advisory Committee, that they seek a little bit of a broader consultation over these particular issues with some of the people living down that area with the traditional owners? It'd be really gratefully appreciated.
Mr. Langevald's thumbs up, I take it, is a yes to your
That's a
question.
yes.
Thank you. Anything further? One matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Item number 19 is moved Councillor McGregor, seconded Councillor Hollywood. Councillor McGregor has the call. Councillor McGregor.
Now I've got a lot of representations from the community about council's response to the ref. All of them applauded in its thoroughness and in its general direction, particularly that notion that there should have been a full EIS over the whole of the highway duplication thing, so that the whole of the community can be involved in that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McGregor. Is a second to wish to speak? Councillor Hollywood.
No, not at this point, no.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Councillor McGregor, I've had a number of residents in the Medlow Bath area contact me about this, and they are concerned about the ref as well, and how it deliberately bypasses the Environment and Planning Assessment Act and its requirements. In supporting the Mayor announcing if New South Wales transport infrastructure fails to comply with its obligations under the Act, Blue Mountain City Council will consider proceeding against Transport Infrastructure New South Wales in the Land and Environment Court. It has been raised as well, Mr. Mayor, at the expense of the Upper Blue Mountains water quality, the REF and proposed GWH surface duplication from Explorers Tree to Mount Mark and Stage 1's duplication at Medlow Bath will both significantly damage and pollute the water catchment on both sides of the Great Western Highway. Consequently, Minister Toole's idea of the GWH duplication construction schedule commencing in late 22 at Medlow Bath must be stopped or put back to enable a proper EIS and corresponding into the 19-kilometre tunnel feasibility to be undertaken. That's the concern from a lot of the residents within Medlow Bath, and they've asked me to bring that forward tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schreiber, duly noted. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Councillor Brown.
First of all, I want to thank the staff, and I think Kim Barrett might have had quite a bit to do with it, and also from the community on the fantastic job on the submission, which I think really galvanised and sort of given a lot of comfort to the community to see that level of support coming through. And they were saying, "Oh, they must have got a lot of legal advice." And I said, "Oh, I think they know their planning. I think they know what they're doing." Yes, first of all, thank you for that. There's no question that there are two things that the state government need to do. And one of them, of course, is a proper environmental impact statement of the whole project. As the councillor pointed out, rather than doing the salami slicing, so you never see the full impact because you make it up into little bits that don't look so bad. But I was also really impressed with them taking on the description of impacts as being minor or moderate when they were clearly going to be major. We're actually looking at the destruction of place. And I think there's a very good, the simple statement, Medlow Bath will become a place to drive through rather than a place to experience. And that's the heart of it, that they're actually going to destroy what Medlow Bath is. It's a mountain retreat. It's not going to be a retreat anymore. It's going to be a freight corridor. The Hydro have already indicated they probably won't go ahead with the development, that they were going to increase their rooms numbers considerably, and they won't do that. And all of that has a lot of impact on the economy. I think, as well as the actual amenity of Medlow Bath, we'll lose Medlow Bath, this lovely sort of slightly magical heritage village. We will lose that, and we'll just become a place to pass through, not a place to visit. So the economics of that are enormous, as well as the very detailed environmental risks that the staff have dealt with in terms of the impact on the hanging swamps. So I really support this because I feel like it gives us ground, it gives the council ground for actually taking the state government on legally if necessary, because I believe that is the case. And I think that the tunnel under option, which has been done by someone from the former worker of the RMS, and the costings on it show that really there isn't much in it at all, and enormous impact that we would have from up to 2 years roadworks would not happen if they go under. If they must look at extending the tunnel under Medlow Bath. I think that's really important that the council now takes that all the way. So thank you to the staff for doing such a great job. I felt a bit ashamed of my submission after I saw it, but that's what you're there for. So thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor van der Clay.
Just a question to you, Mr. Mayor. We received an email with an amendment. Is that the motion that's being put at the present?
No, we have the item that's in the business paper has been moved.
And
thanks, Councillor van der Clay. What's been moved? Sorry?
There was a fourth point on the business paper, only had 3 points. This had a fourth point.
What's moved is what's in the business paper.
And the fourth point, because there was an amendment circulated around under your name.
Yeah, no, it includes what I circulated, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. That was taken basically to be an addendum.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, anyone else wish to speak? One matter before us, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. I thank you. Notice there's a motion, item number 20. It's moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Schreiber. Councillor Brown has the call. You're on mute, Councillor Brown.
Again, thank you to the staff. As you all know, I think I've even missed some of the motions, but this is a 25-year saga, just passes from one councillor to another. And there's almost a paralysis around Railway Parade. We have had to put back the Lurie Area Traffic Management Plan, and really when you look at the scheduling on that, it's be 18 months at least before we were doing anything on Railway Parade if it's part of the Lurie Area Traffic Management Plan. So I think this is a great suggestion because it's one of the two options that is in the Lurie Area Traffic Management Plan anyway, and something that the residents have supported. I mean, there's been support both for one way and for a shared zone or both. And this is something that can be done, hopefully, you know, without doing all the infrastructure, to see how it works. And really with that road, I mean, I just won't go on about it, but I drive along it just to see the traffic. Even now in lockdown, it's amazing how many cars are using this road. And as a Lura Mall gardener, I know, because of the number of times the corner bed is taken out, almost taking out the telegraph pole on one occasion, taking out a wall. It's the corner, when the big trucks use that road, they swipe the garden bed on the corner as they come onto the mall. And these massive trucks that should not be going down there. And so making it a shared zone would certainly get rid of that appeal. It'll do a huge amount to stop that being used as a rat run for the industrial estate, and just the safety. Because I feel that as soon as, and we're going to be coming out of lockdown, it looks like, fairly soon. And we know, and that will be good for the mountains, that there'll be a rush from Sydney to come up here, and it'll all be on again with Railway Parade as the way to avoid the congestion in Lura Mall. And as I said, the road is not made for it. It can't be made for it. It's just a goat track on a mountainside. So this is a really good solution. It gives staff and the community a chance to see how it would actually work, as well as creating an immediate safety measure. And our last of the many motions that have gone through on this was that we would put safety measures, short-term safety measures in place. And so I see this as that. So thank you to the staff for proposing it, and hopefully the Traffic Committee would then come up with support it or some version of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Councillor Schreiber is the seconder, then Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In seconding this, Mr. Mayor, it's important that we look at this as a shared zone to trial it. Like, it was back in June 2017 when we asked for it to be looked at as a shared zone with a 40-kilometre speed limit through there, because there is no footpaths, and the safety of the residents through there and the children trying to go to school. Now's a good opportunity again to go ahead and trial this as a safety zone, to try and stop the trucks from running down through there, whereabouts the trucks could go still through the mall and then down to Bunnings and so forth. But it's the safety of the residents within that area which we have to take care of. And it is one of those that's over 30-year-old, Mr. Mayor, trying to get Railway Parade fixed.
Thanks, Councillor Schreiber. Councillor McGregor has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I support this call for a shared zone. You know, there's been many CSRs, many notices of motions, not only in this term of council, but in previous terms of councils, that contrary to some views, I have either initiated or supported to make this this very dangerous bit of road safe for pedestrians by either making a one-way thing or a shared zone. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor McGregor. Anyone further? One matter before us hasn't been spoken against. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 22, it's Councillor Hollywood. She's going to add to her motion, and it's seconded by Councillor McGregor. Councillor Hollywood has the call. And I'm not leaving the chair, Councillor Hollywood. I'm still here. I'm just trying to get the lights to come back on. You have the call.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for their patience with reading through these quite lengthy motions and the amendment that I put forward as well. What brings these two pieces of I guess, elements of the motion together is that they are both about legislation that is currently before the Parliament of New South Wales, the one that's not meeting at the moment, unlike local government. The point that I want to make is that we, as local government, are very much bound by the legislation that is created in the by the New South Wales government and the New South Wales Parliament. And I would like us to consider tonight support for one bill, opposition to another. So to cut to the chase, I'm putting forward that our council expresses its support to the bill that I want to acknowledge is a bill brought forward by David Shoebridge and the Greens, but strongly supported by Labor in the upper house, to prohibit property developers and their associates from running for local government. The interesting thing is that whilst this has been supported in the upper house of Parliament, it seems to be stuck in the lower house. So we would like the bill supported by the Liberals in Parliament, and we would like to send a message of support to all of our colleagues in other local government and to the Minister and Shadow Ministers of our support for the fact that developers and their associates should not be running in local council elections, because, as Matt Keane says, it's like giving, what does he say, putting Dracula in charge of the blood cabinet. I can't see the point there, but I think it would be great if we have send a strong message about who we think is appropriate to be sitting on the governing body of local councils, and we don't think it should be developers. The other motion, also element to this motion, is about expressing our opposition to the New South Wales government's plans to completely change the way in which developer contributions are distributed to local councils. And there was an inquiry in the upper house, and that inquiry found that the bill that the government has come up with should not proceed. So basically, I'm seeking endorsement from this council that we oppose the bill and support the recommendations from the parliamentary inquiry that was held only recently. So I hope that explains where we're at. Thank you.
And just to note, as with my point that Councillor van der Klee took us to, which sat at the bottom of the motion around Medlow Bath, which directs the resolution through the offices of the local members, so too, I note, does Councillor Hollywood's motion.
Yes.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this? Councillor McGregor has the call.
I think it's very timely. Notice the motion that Councillor Hollywood's brought forward. We've got a lot of dormant zombie DAs hanging around the LGA for quite large developments, quite large and destructive developments that are not being well received by the community. You know, it speaks to our lack of power over what's actually going on in our LGA at the moment. Our lack of power to govern it in any way or limit it in any way. Having developers or people with an interest in development on councils would be absolutely disastrous for us in our currently powerless position, particularly.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Anyone else? Anything further on this? I think it's wildly agreed with. Councillor Hua.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanting to add my voice to wildly agree with the motion put forward by Councillor Hollywood. Wish to thank Councillor Hollywood for bringing this to the council's attention. It really is an urgent issue, even if the upper house in the parliament is deciding not to sit. But it's, I think it's a great example again of local government providing leadership where it's demonstrably lacking at other levels of government. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? It's one matter before us. It hasn't been spoken against. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Councillors, we have a brace of urgency motions. Never have I seen so many. And then we also have a confidential item to deal with. I'm going to ask for a 5-minute break so everyone can go and do what's necessary for what I suspect will be a long haul ahead. So it's moved Councillor Hua, seconded Councillor Hollywood, that we take a 5-minute break. Put it, all those in favour? Against, declare it carried. The hour is now 9:25. I expect councillors to be back in their places at precisely 9:30. Just during the break, I'd caution all councillors and staff to go onto mute. Uh, 1 minute to resumption. Councillors could turn their cameras back on. As the hour is now 9:30, I'll do a call of quorum. What councillors are present, please? I see Councillor Miles, I see Councillor Hollywood, I see myself, I see Councillor Fernanda, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Vanderclay, Councillor Fell, Councillor Christie. I have a quorum. So we will resume. I do want to say a great thanks to the staff tonight, including Storm, who assists me. She's been keeping the lights on for me, and she has also been helping to keep this virtual council meeting going, as she has right throughout the period of COVID-19. So I'd like to publicly acknowledge the efforts of Storm Kavanagh and the rest of the staff in keeping this council meeting going. Thank you, everyone. All right, so I have urgency motions, quite a number of them. I'm going to ask councillors who are putting forward urgency motions to speak very briefly to their motions. And when I say very briefly, I actually mean very briefly. And unless there's opposition, I'm going to ask councillors to refrain from speaking in the debate. Given the lateness of the hour, if 6 councillors all talk about how much they agree with each other, it really doesn't assist us getting through the business of the meeting at this late stage. I will rule on each of the urgency motions in seriatim. So the first one is a matter of urgency, standing in the name of Councillor Hollywood, about pedestrian access and safety at the Hazelbrook Village Shopping Precinct. It is seconded by Councillor Vanderklay. I do rule that it is urgent because it relates to a safety matter and therefore needs to be dealt with before the next meeting, normal meeting of the council or ordinary meeting of the council. Councillor Hollywood, in as short a period of time as possible, do you want to speak to your resolution?
Thanks very much. I'm actually hoping that the way I've written the motion is fairly self-explanatory. So maybe what I will just highlight is I'm seeking to include in the car parking study a consideration of a safety audit with a particular focus on pedestrians. I think I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I think that assists. Is there anyone against this motion? One matter before us. I'll put it all those in favour. Against, declare it carried unanimously. Councillor Christie has a resolution that has been sent around with some suggested word changes by the staff, which I believe he has taken on board. It relates to traffic issues in the Glenbrook Village. It is seconded by Councillor Bowling. I rule that it is urgent because it relates to safety. Councillor Christie, in as short a time as possible, you have the call.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And just to be quite brief, the motion itself is quite explanatory. I brought this motion, urgency motion, to council because a number of residents of Glenbrook have reported near misses to me, and I believe it is about time, after all the years of myself as well as yourself moving motions, calling for a solution to the traffic management problems of Glenbrook Village to be addressed, that it's well overdue.
Thank you, Councillor Christie. I, as a Ward 4 councillor, also want to thank you for this motion, which I fully support. No opposition to this motion? One matter before us. I'll put it all as in favour. Against, declare it carried unanimously. Councillor Hollywood, level crossing over the railway line at Falconbridge. It has a safety component. I rule that it's urgent, that it should be dealt with before the next ordinary meeting of the council. Councillor Hollywood moves, Councillor Vanderklay Councillor Hoare seconds. Councillor Hollywood has the floor.
Yes, thank you. I have been lobbied, I guess, by and had a number of issues raised by residents in relation to the level crossing and the surrounds at Falconbridge. Now, I want to first up acknowledge that the level crossing is not our responsibility. It is actually the New South Wales government's. But when I actually spoke with residents virtually, I was really horrified by some of the stories, and particularly a story by a woman with disability. She has vision impairment, who has had people try to assist her to make her way over that level crossing, and it is impossible. Now, a chorus of people came, also said that, you know, prams, children with bikes, the whole thing is just a mess. And there are some CSRs floating around. I know it has been raised by community members with the state member as well. So I really think now that I've heard those stories, we really need to start taking this really seriously. I would hate to see somebody injured. And I think, as I said in the motion, the community had great expectations when there was a huge amount of heavy vehicles there doing some repair work. They actually thought that it was being properly upgraded. The lift had gone in further down at the station, and they thought, here we go, we're going to get some improvements around accessibility on this level crossing. But that was not to be. It was simply some repatching of the asphalt, which just simply wasn't good enough. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for receiving this as urgent. And I hope that we can, as a council, advocate for change, but also look for what we might be able to do within our own scope of works with the pedestrian access and mobility plan.
I take it there's no opposition to this. There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Resolution or proposed urgency motion in relation to Sunny Ridge, Luther and Emma Parades at Winmalee. It's moved to Councillor Miles and seconded by Councillor Fell. Councillor Miles, given the safety component of this, I rule that it needs to be dealt with before the next meeting of council. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Simply to say, I was contacted by a local resident who pointed out that the intense heat of the 2013 fires appears to have done some sort of damage to the underlying structure supporting the three roads mentioned. There are continual pothole issues. Work is done to replace the surface and then it frays, and there's subsidence issues as well. So it's clear that we need to have a look at that as a fire-affected road. It sounds counterintuitive for a fire to affect a road, but this is what appears to be happening in this place. So it's a matter of vehicular safety. Just on a quick aside, it was very halting to me to be pointed out by the resident that in fact the outline of two vehicles remains in Emma Parade where they were when they burnt and melted during the fires, that the imprint on the asphalt from those two vehicles, which are of course long gone, remains. But it's also a stark reminder for the residents themselves that the intensity and damage of that fire and the traumatic event. So I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Miles, I thank you for the motion. I also want to acknowledge that both Councillors Fell and Fernanda have raised these issues with me. There's no one opposed to this, I take it. That being the case, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Horns Point Fire Trail Maintenance, as this issue is pressing and as it is possible for work to take place before the next ordinary meeting of council, I do rule this is urgent. It's moved by Councillor Brown. It's seconded by Councillor Schreiber. Councillor Brown has the call.
I don't know if you're all in this or been getting all the emails, but there's been a lot. There's a whole Facebook page about this. A lot of email activity and community concern about a very loved bushwalk, which is also a fire trail, and whether the scale of clearing, including of about apparently up to 60 quite large trees and cutting of others. And obviously this is an issue where there's a maintenance issue of fire trails. We know we have to get on with doing that work, but it's whether the scale of the work is that's planned is necessary. I understand, but only from, I want a briefing just because I don't know I have asked a couple of weeks ago, I think Councillor McGregor did as well. And we do need, because there's been stuff on the media, we just need to know what's going on. And that council, I understand, was supposed to start work yesterday and hasn't. So it has been postponed, I think. So we just need to know what's going on. Thank you.
Yes. Councillor McGregor, I know you do wish to speak, so I will take I'll give you the call.
I understand, Mr. Mayor, that the Fire Met team is reviewing the extent of the work and the community has been made aware of this. So perhaps the relevant staff could either confirm that or otherwise. And if that is the case, perhaps we could have a briefing on the sort of work that's done on fire trials, to protect the environment, as it were, and manage the fire trail at the same time, rather than one that's specific to this. If that work has been reviewed.
Councillor McGregor, just taking your question further, item 2 in Councillor Brown's urgency motion effectively calls for a briefing, and I imagine that briefing would include any extra work in relation to this particular trail and the deferral that's taken place of that work and what they're looking at, etc. Can I ask the CEO, in relation to the further point you made, the general point, whether she could just include that in the briefing? And if she could, I think we might be in a happy place. Councillor, Dr. Dillon, are you happy to take that on board? The further point.
Happy to take that on board, Mr. Mayor.
Include that in the briefing, yes.
Yes.
Councillor Brown, you wouldn't object to that? No. Okay, is there any opposition to this? Councillor van der Klee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for Councillor Brown's edification, this fire trail is on the FAF plan. It's one of our strategic fire trails, and it's been upgraded to take the Cat 1 fire trucks, which is the large one. And it's important for the safety of firefighters that we do that work. And I'm more than happy for the staff to have a look at it and see if they can be sensitive to the environment around there. But it is a very important fire trail that needs to be upgraded. So, but I'm more than happy to have the briefing and more than happy for them to review it.
It hasn't been spoken against. There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Councillors, we have before us a confidential item. Before I go to confidential session, and before anyone tries to assist me in chairing the meeting, I just want to see whether or not councillors do require debate on this. Councillor Christie, your hand is up.
I believe I had a further urgency motion regarding Glenbrook Park.
Did you? Have I missed something, Executive Officer?
Can read it out. Jasmine sent it at 6:42 p.m.
Councillor Christie, I have it here. It's my apologies, and it is a safety matter. It relates to Glenbrook Park and maintenance issues. It is moved by you. It is seconded by Councillor Bowling. I declare that it's urgent. Councillor Christie has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In submitting this notice of motion, it was a matter of urgency. It was basically due to the second councillor service or third councillor service requests in a matter of 7 days regarding Glenbrook Park. There's been a number of instances where the metal bars within the fence posts have been removed, which have allowed many children, including my own, being able to sneak through. And this is a worrying sign for any parent, as well as flooding due to what I can assume is inadequate drainage or broken pipes or something. But as Glenbrook Park is being used more and more due to the increased restrictions, I'm calling for increased monitoring and maintenance of the park, as well as urgent repairs to the fence, which is allowing children to sneak through potentially onto a very busy road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Christie. I do apologise, and thank you for bringing this forward. I don't think there's any opposition to this, is there? There isn't. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Councillors, we will resolve now into confidential session. So I'm going to take a motion. It's moved Councillor van der Klee, seconded Councillor Fell, go into confidential session, discuss the final item. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. I'll ask the staff to now take us into confidential session.
Thank you, Toby. If you could move that us into the breakout room.
And Storm, if we can leave the building together, I actually have my documents with me. And as we're both here, I'll save the postage and hand them to you.
Very well.
That's okay.
We seem to be still recording, would that be right?
Yes, Councillor Bowling, that is right.
Yes, I'll stop the recording once we go into the breakout room and we record.
Move that we close. Just check with the executive officer. That is the end of the business of the council.
Yes, Mr Mayor, no other items.
Thank you. There being no other items, it's moved Councillor Vanderklay, seconded Councillor Fell that we close the meeting. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. I bid you a fond good night. And Storm, I'll meet you outside the executive area, if that's okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Toby.
Good
You
night.
can end the
Thank you,
meeting.
everyone. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, Storm.
Thanks all.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks.
It
Good
wasn't
night,
too
everyone.
painful.